Alright guys, so welcome. We're going to get started here. As it says in the title, tonight we're going to be doing some Quixel texturing, and then we're going to send our meshes over to Unity 5, brand new Unity 5, nice and shiny, and I'm going to show you guys what the new materials are for that and how great it looks when it's in engine. So let's go ahead and jump into Max and I'll show you where we're at and kind of explain the plan, and as I step through the plan I'll explain what we're doing for each step, okay? Alright, here we go. Okay, so, well, that's Unity, a preview. Alright, so here we are in Max, and what I've got here are my base materials applied, my normal map I've been working on, as well as just the realistic lighting to really kind of help us out here. But this pales in comparison to what it looks like in engine, so that's what we're going to be shooting for here tonight. Now, since we have the model, this particular model, or this particular set of models actually, these are all individual parts, as you saw on the previous lesson here, individual parts that we can use as a modular kit to design any sort of layout that we want. Because they are all relying heavily on overlapping elements, what we're going to be doing is actually using a template to create our textures on, and once we have that template, we're going to apply it to the materials here. So we're going to use Quixel to kind of, almost like an artist palette, sort of design our texture, and then just take that and paste it onto our existing texture sheet, because it's very specifically set up to use overlapping textures. So let me show you kind of what the idea is with that. Let's jump over to Photoshop really quick. So in Photoshop, you see here, this texture here is my normal map that is in work. So I'm going to have to zoom in here for you to see it on stream. So let me zoom in a little bit. Take a look over here and see how it looks. Yeah, you guys should be able to see that. Okay, so this is, you know, that metal catwalk kind of effect that we have going on here. And what I've done here is I took a 512 by 512 square of it, and it actually had to shrink down just a little bit to about 500 by 500. It's a little weird numbers, but that's where the math came out. So I took that and sort of duplicated it and pushed it all around to all the pieces that made sense. And I've created a couple little rivets. You see the rivets here on those metal braces as the pole comes down. I've got a bunch of, that's not it. I have a bunch of reference, of course. Always do shoot some reference. Here we go. All right. So our reference here, you see the poles come down, and then these metal cross sections here. That's what you mounted to the overall structure there. So that's what these, that's what these things are here. And you can actually see those inside of Max. If I pop over to Max really quick and zoom in, you can see them here. They look a little weird in Max here. My graphics card setting is not quite right where they look inverted, but we're not going to worry about that because we're going to look at it in engine. So anyway, so I've done a little bit of work here, but what we really need are the actual textures. There's not been much in the way of normal maps on these guys. They're pretty just smooth pieces. We are going to be creating a small vertical slice for this section here, because this is the actual side trim to all the pieces, and we want to make that continuously repeat. And what that is going to look like is not any view. Of course, it's going to be the last one I open. Yes, it will be. So for this guy here, I'm shooting for something like this. See, we have a top ledge, a bottom ledge, and a flat center area. But just the flat center area is a little boring. So I think we're going to add a small cutout, or maybe a small like pillar, something sort of like these, but if you imagine them in here. So we're going to use these as our reference to kind of make up some details that we can take and we can repeat all the way across. Now how we're going to do this is, I have another texture here. You saw this one in the beginning. It's like, wow, colored squares, ooh, yeah. But what these are going to be is, this is an ID map to use inside of Quixel to generate some material palettes. And then once we have the materials we want, we're going to take these materials and bring them into our overall texture, and then use that as kind of a stamp to finish off the rest of our texture. Now what we're going for here is the top left here and the bottom right are going to be our main metallic texture. So this is going to be the metal that this normal map here that you actually walk on. So we're going to do two variants. If we can make that work, we're going to do the first variant is going to be just a nice clean base, just metal. It has to repeat at the edges. We have to be careful of that. Then our bottom right corner is going to be a very dirty, grimy variant of that. So you can have your shiny and new, and then you can have your really dirty. Then these two squares here are going to be the same thing, a clean and a dirty, but these are going to be our generic metal for the railings themselves. So that's this area here, these guys. And this is going to be sort of an aluminum, chrome, somewhere in that family. Just a metal that you can have look like it came right off the factory floor and then it's been in a sewer for ages. Okay? So that's the plan. We're going to use this as kind of a guide to create just some samples that we can all over the place. All right? So before we do all of that, let's go ahead and get all of our stuff set up in Unity, so then we have a working sample to kind of pop back and look at and see how the textures are coming along. All right? So I'm gonna bring up Unity here. So this is Unity 5, and if you haven't downloaded yet, it's awesome, and the best part is it's free. So there you go, let that sink in, it's free. Go ahead and check that out, guys, because it is amazing. I love it so far. All right, so how do we get things into Unity? I'm gonna give you a quick crash course on Unity. Excuse me. Quick crash course on Unity in case you've never used it. It's very simple to use, very easy, I love it. So our standard movement here is you right click and hold and use the arrow keys, and you can kind of fly around. Right now you can't really tell because I don't have anything in the environment, but very simple flying around mechanics that you're familiar with from various games. And then to create anything, we just go to our menu here, and let me readjust that, there we go. So I'm gonna go and create, and we want a 3D object, and I'm going to create a plane. So this puts a plane in our world. Now if you see me fly around, that makes a lot more sense. And I'm going to zero the plane, 0, 0, 0. And now I know the plane's right there, but here's a common thing that happens. I wanna make sure you guys are aware of it. If you just added the plane, here it is, we can see it in our list, this is called our hierarchy. So this is a list of everything in your scene. Every environment here that you're creating is called a scene. Think of like a movie set, okay? Everything on this one set. So I have my plane, but where is it? Well, all you have to do is select the object here, point anywhere in here, and hit F, and it will find the object for you. So it'll zoom right to it. Okay, so here we are, we have our plane. Now we can actually start to see things like lighting and all that. So if I were to bring an object into here, so let's say 3D object, cube. Again, I'll zero it, so I know where it is. There it is. Now you see as I move the cube up, you can see the lighting taking into effect. So now we know that we have something in the scene, okay? So we have our object in the scene, and we want to apply a texture to it. Right now it's kind of bland and white and very washed out. So our textures are in two forms. You have a texture, which is the actual map, so like a normal map, a diffuse map, a specular map, metalness, all that kind of stuff. And then you have a material. So just like in Max or other softwares, if you're not familiar, the material actually tells the editor how it's going to handle these maps and how it's going to display them. So I'm going to go down here and right click, and I'm going to say create. I'm going to create a folder called materials. So we start to clean up all this stuff here. So we go into materials. Oh, I already had one. Okay. So in materials here, I'm just going to right click and say create material. There it is. So let's call this catwalk test. So this is going to be the material that we're going to use to test our catwalk. So I'm going to just drag this and drop it right on the cube. And you'll notice that right away nothing really changes too much because everything has the same standard when you start. So this is still just a standard material. To affect the material, what we're going to do is we're going to click on it, and you'll see over here the inspector is what this is called. The inspector changes whenever you select something. It's like the specific properties for that object. So like lights have different properties than say cube. So as I select things, so I select the material, now I have my options over here. The wonderful, amazing thing about Unity 5, guys, is that the standard material accepts things like metalness, and not only that, they're basically drag and drop. I mean, how awesome is that? So for example, I'm going to come back here to assets. I still have that material selected even though I'm moving around here. I can click in the box, I can drag to the box, or I can click the little, it's like a circle with a dot in it right next to it, and it brings up all the textures that I have in the scene. So once you created your material, you would then right click and import, and you import all of your textures. Now I happen to already have a bunch of textures here, so I'm going to use those just as an example. Pretend you've already imported all your textures. So now I say, okay, albedo. Albedo is essentially what people are referring to as a diffuse map. It's just your color map, okay? So I'm going to click this and say, oh, where's my albedo? I'm going to look for it here. You should be able to select it and it will tell you _D. Yep, there we go. So I'm going to choose that. Now this happens to be a texture for a gun that I did, but just as an example of how to get textures in general into here, then you guys can, adapt it to your needs. So there we go. So now we have some color on the cube. Let's bring in a normal map. So I'm going to click this and look for a normal map. There's my normal map. So I'm going to apply that. And you can see, I can see it a little bit on here. It's a little hard to tell, but because it's flat. But there's a normal map on there now. You can see a little bit over here with the lighting changing, which is awesome. Let's see if we can get a metallic, which in this case would have been my gloss. Gloss is pretty good for that. So we'll use that. So just click it, that's it, done, it's imported. Now you can see the lighting really affecting this. So it's applying these materials for us right away. And everything is over here for you, so you can click these anytime and say, oh, I want to import a different one, I'm going to use a different thing, I want to try something different. There you go. You can even do occlusion, so if you rendered out your AO, you can bring your occlusion into there. So I've got a couple different ones. That's the correct one. So there you go. Now we're really getting a nice material definition for this object. And so we're going to be doing the same thing, but for our sewer kit, and we're going to use a different material. We're going to use this material, but we're going to swap out the textures. So just wanted to show you guys how it works. Now we're going to go into getting everything imported, okay? So let's say goodbye to the cube. He was helpful, but not all that helpful. And let's go over to our assets. And I already have the file imported here. You can see it here at the bottom, but I'm going to do it again to show you guys how it works, okay? Let's go over to Max and different control schema. I have to remember that. So I'm just going to select everything. There we go. And file, export, selected. Find the folder. Where do I want to put it? Sewer. Here we go. Okay, so I called it test me. FBX is the most native file format into Unity. Requires the least amount of translation, so that's why I like to use it. Name it whatever you like. Save. Mine's telling me replace because I already did it once. Alright, so here's your FBX import settings. You'll notice if I pull down the top here is presets. I have two presets that I use for Unity. The one that I named just Unity is if it's going to be a static mesh. Anything like a world piece, which is what we're doing here. Anything down to a prop, a weapon, anything that is not going to move or have any sort of animation. And then Unity animated is for things like characters and such that have animations. So we're just going to click Unity for now. And these are my settings. I'll try and go through them briefly for you. Basically, I keep smoothing groups. I turn off split vertex normals. Tangents and binormals I don't necessarily need because we're going to calculate it in Engine to get better results. I do want to triangulate the mesh. Animation is off, so none of that applies. It's not a camera, it's not a light. Scale factor is set to inches, that's important. Y up, yep, that's what Unity likes. And we're done, so click OK. And there, it did it pretty quickly. So that's done. So now back to Unity. So here's my model right here. And what I want to do here is set the scale to 0.02546. That is the correct scaling for working in units of inches inside of Max and bringing it into Unity, which works in meters. That's the handshake that works well between the two of them. So I'm going to click apply to that. There we go. Let's go over to animations tab. Should have none. Yep, okay, so we're good. So you check on animations and it does not have animation, but it says no animation data, so that's okay. Even though I cannot uncheck import animation. That's new in Unity 5. I didn't see that before in 4. Usually I can uncheck that, click apply. You don't want any animation data whatsoever. And for the rig, no rig, obviously, because it's not animated. So this is the only thing we really need to do here. I'm not going to check generate light map UVs this time. We'll go over that in a separate lesson. Let me check, just got a message. Okay, got a message from you guys that the music is a little loud. I apologize, let me take that down just a little bit for you guys. There we go. Turn that down just a little bit, let me know how that works for you guys. Okay, I appreciate the feedback. All right, so we got all of our settings, so we're all set there. Now all you have to do to get it imported is drag it into the hierarchy, and now it's going to be in our world. Now, that's a little small. but that's because this is a little huge. So let's delete that guy. Yeah, we'll find him again. There we go. Just to make it a little easier I set this back to 1, we're gonna make it huge so that I can move around it a lot better. And you'll see what I mean. If I zoom in and I'm moving around, I can get pretty close to it and see the details that we're looking at much easier than if it's actual scale. So we'll use this to test the scale, test the details, and then we'll put it back to scale when we're all set. All right, so here we are inside of Unity, and this is the default lighting. Everything's looking pretty nice. And you'll notice that it came in with our original map, which is a normal map. And that's great because we get to see those details. And as you can see here, I told you before, in Max, these look inverted, but we're not going to care about what Max shows us because we're going to go for what Unity shows us. All right, so this looks great. So let's go ahead and get the material on this. I'm open up materials and drag our catwalk. You'll notice that as I hover over things, it says, oh, you want to apply it to this or that or that. So we have to do each piece, which is a little annoying, but it's okay. So I'm going to apply it to each piece just really quickly. And you'll notice that the railings, pardon me, the railings are separate from the actual catwalk itself. This way you could potentially use the railings in another setting and you're not tied to this kit. So that way I don't have to recreate the railings later on. I can just use the railings for a different piece. All right, so let's just keep doing this. You're all set. A couple more. This one at the end is the broken one, which I really like. So I'm looking forward to seeing that in engine. It kind of came out quite nicely. All right. So there we are. So right now this doesn't make a whole lot of sense because we were just testing things out here. So I'm going to turn all these off for now. Let's turn that off. Metallic off. Normal map we're going to keep on because we're going to switch it. Okay, well, let's put it back to what it should be. All right, there we go. Now it's looking very, very white, but if you notice, if I zoom in, where's my preview? How big it is for you guys. Okay, so if I zoom in, you can still see the details here. So they're still here, it's just really, really white. So let's go ahead and affect that. Now, this will change when we get an albedo map on here, but for now, let's bring this down a little bit. So instead of pure white, let's bring it down somewhere in like the 170 range. 170 is pretty good. Okay, that's a lot better. We can see the details easier now, and it's not so garish on our eyes. Okay, that's excellent. And you can see with the Unity 5, we get the nice reflections here working, so it looks like real metal. That's really awesome, and we're gonna make it look even better with Quixel. Okay, that's looking great. Yep, all the way to the end, it looks great. Perfect, you guys. Okay, so here we are in Unity 5. Everything's looking great with our shader, and we're gonna add, and we're gonna add more to this. Now, you'll notice we have some options over here. I just wanna go over these quickly with you guys so that you know what you're looking at. So under your options, your rendering, you want to be opaque. That means it's completely solid throughout. If you change this to cutout or fade or transparent or anything like that, you're gonna start to get some, pardon me a second. Oh, that hurt. I stubbed my toe. You're gonna start to get some varying effects, and so you'll wanna look at this very carefully because as I change these, it can affect how your normals work, and you wanna make sure that you understand what that's gonna do for you. So don't just change it and think that it's good. It'll be awesome after Quixel. Yes, it will. This will be, it already looks great, and it's gonna look even way better with Quixel. Pardon me a second, guys, I want to take a quick drink. Okay, so the main things when working with a primarily metal object like this is, we're gonna be working with our metallic here, our metallic slider. You can see I can turn this way up, and what this does is it makes it almost purely, almost like a chrome or a, it starts to look sort of liquidy, like it's so metal, and I think it's a little far. I think we're gonna end up somewhere in the mid-range between 0.5 and 0.6 maybe, somewhere in this range. We want it to be very metal, but we need to take into account the fact that we're gonna have our other textures on here, which is gonna change how the light plays on it. But you can also affect your smoothness here. And the smoothness is awesome. So if you put both of these all the way up, then this is essentially a purely reflective ball, which starts to look really weird with this normal map here. So we don't want that. I'm gonna bring that smoothness down somewhere mid-range, bring this guy down somewhere high mid-range, and I think we have a good starting point for pure metal. And now we're going to dirty it up, and we're going to add all kinds of things to it. All right, so we're good here inside of Unity. I'm going to go ahead and save the scene. And call this, let's see, sewer. Yeah, sewer kit B, map work. There we go. Okay, so we're just working on the maps for this. I'm going to really kind of bring this out some more for you guys. There we go. All right, looking good. Let's jump over to Photoshop and Quixel and let's do some work there, okay? So here we are in Photoshop, and if you guys are not familiar with Quixel, this is what it looks like here when it's running inside of Photoshop. Don't let the small size, fool you. This is a powerful, powerful tool set. First, what we're gonna do is we're gonna work on the normal map for the edge piece. Like we talked about earlier, we're gonna have a ledge and a downset and another ledge and maybe some vertical elements that are going to be in the middle there. So I'm going to be using the first tool here, which is called Undo. Then when we want to create our base material, sort of our albedo maps, I'm going to be using Dedo, but we're going to use Dedo with this texture here to create our palettes to apply. And we can use 3Do for our 3D representation, but we don't really need to because we have Unity. All right, so let's get started. So I'm going to click Undo, and Undo is going to launch here, and I'm just going to click the up arrow. And now I'm going to click this here, Add New Sculpt Layer. Now I had to do that because I've already done some work here, and that's what it was requiring for me to get moving here. And if you see, I zoom in here, I started to do this a little earlier, and it wasn't really, it's okay. So I'm going to add some more to it. Actually, what I should do is create a selection first. So my selection here is going to be just the top, those vertical bars. So I'm going to select about that much. There's a little bit extra room. Now if I hover over this, you'll notice it says, do you want to turn your selection into a normal map detail? Well, yeah. So I click the button, and there we go. So now I have my vertical bar. You'll notice it's on top. We can keep that, or we can push it underneath, which is what I think I'm going to do. But first, let's change our options here. So you have your shape, which you can choose like a chiseled look, which is pretty cool if you're doing fine edged things. I tend to just keep it on smooth and then affect everything else. So the bevel is really neat. You can do some cool stuff with groove if you're creating edges and things, like where two parts come together. You can get to create some really cool stuff. Like an example would be, here's my remote for the TV, and you'll notice right on the edges there, let me see if I can get close to you, where the seams of the two edges of the plastic meet. That's a really good option for the groove there, which I kind of show you what that looks like here. See, it creates like an outside edge to that. What we want here though is probably just a standard bevel. I'm going to go really shallow on this, like 2, somewhere like that. There we go. No, I think I do 1, actually 2. 2, there we go. Your depth determines kind of how punched out it is. So I'm going to go pretty low on this, probably 250. That works. My contrast, I usually keep around 75. I don't like my normal maps to be too overtly in your face. If it is, it starts to get kind of edgy, and I don't like that. And softness, this is good for if you have a smooth detail. We're going to keep this pretty hard, so it's going to be 0. So there's our vertical bar. So that looks nice. I'm going to take this, and what I have to do is just find this other detail by hiding and unhiding. Okay, it's this one, that third one down. So I'm going to move this guy just below him, and now he's actually underneath. You can custom load for you to demonstrate the bevel. That's true. That's true. Yeah, I can take a look at that real quick for you guys. So if I do open 3D custom loader, let's go ahead and see if we can launch that. And where did I save my texture to? Sewer. Oh, but you know what? It only accepts OBJs. And I do have one here. Let's see if we can load that. I'm going to take the normal from the active document, and 3D is being a pain in the butt. Yeah, it does this sometimes. You have to do it a couple times. 3D is still a little flaky. There we go. So yeah, 3D is a little bit flipping out on me here. If I try and get pretty close to here, we can take a look. It does not appear to be. There we go. Now it's accepting it. That's much better. And let me find an area where it is doing bevel for us. I don't see it yet. Well, I know one problem we're seeing here is you notice all the lines everywhere. What that's doing is I have my UV guide layer still on, and so that's what's showing up. Clicked height, beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, so I turn that off. Let me move this over here a little bit and save that. Now if I pull that from there, you'll see those lines disappeared. So that's what that's doing. So what we need to do is just figure out where on the texture sheet is trying to put this piece. I think it's somewhere around here, one of these pieces, but that's okay, because we're going to repeat it all over the place, so we'll definitely see it in a moment here. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. So I'm going to move 3D off screen for just a moment, and let's come back here and work on our actual texture. So now that we have that, zoom out just a little bit, and we want to move this guy around until we find a nice place for him. So these are the end caps actually. Oh, I know exactly what piece that is. And that piece happens to be invisible in this object. Of course it is, you know, the one object that we're trying to use. Okay, so but we're gonna go instead of anyway. So this guy is central here, and that works just fine. Now I need him, and I need the guy directly above him, these two. And what I want to do is make duplicates of this and move them along, but I'm going to cut out this so we can move it along. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to close Undo for a second, because Undo tends to freak out when I do this. So I'm going to take these guys, I'm going to make a duplicate of them. I'll move them all the way to the top, and then I'll merge them down. So now I have those, and if I hide down several letters, you notice now I can hide and unhide. And what we're going to do with this is just cut a vertical section and then duplicate it along. Now, it's not always advised to kind of settle on your normals and kind of flatten everything, but in this instance, because we have lots of overlapping, this is the best way to make it work without causing lots of errors. So I'm going to select from the top here, pretty far over, not quite to the edge, pretty far over like that, and go all the way over to about the same over here. So right there, kind of copy, paste, and there we go. Now we have a good overlap that we can use repeatedly, and I'm just going to duplicate, move, slide it along, and now we have a good thing here. I'm going to purposely offset them because I don't want them to repeat in a really noticeable way. I want them to be kind of random, so it looks almost like it was just they put it together as they were building it. So I'm going to take all these guys, and let's find a spot that we know we're going to see it. So let's duplicate that, and we're going to move it all the way to the bottom. Okay, there we go. Now this is one of the major side pieces, so we'll definitely see this on our textures pretty easily. So let's go ahead and save that. Hide that first to save it, so that way we don't get the nasty lines. Let's bring 3D back into the mix. Here we go. And 3D needs an update. So let's go do that. Custom loader. Okay, and update from active document. There we go. Now if you look here, we got our normal map working with our side details here. So this will go all the way around the edge. You can see the overlap occurring, so it's in some places and not in others. Looks pretty good so far. And the only thing we have to be careful of is because we've got this overlap, we want to make sure that quite literally our corner cases work out. So when it gets into, sorry, I'm trying to get you in the corner. So when we get to the corner like this, we don't have a weird thing where it's like really too close to one another. So we're going to have to shift them along just a little bit. That shouldn't be a big deal though at all. So yeah, that's looking pretty nice. And I wanted to make sure that this top part and this bottom part were far enough to the edges that they don't interfere with the tops of these or the bottoms of these, so they can safely pass underneath, and it's still somewhat plausible that the structure would work. Now you'll notice here on the end piece that it gets kind of angled and stretched, but it looks like it lines up nicely, it follows the edges. What I did there is the unwrap is actually perfectly straight, but then the model is crooked, and it was done on purpose so that when you have the end result here, it looks like it was a straight piece of metal at one time, and then there was some sort of explosion that rocked it and made it, you know, and there you go. So, perfect. All right, so we're all good there. I'm gonna go ahead and repeat the rest of this all the way around, and then we're gonna jump into dedo and do some texturing with that. So let's move this aside, and I'm a little worried that, okay, there it is. I was gonna say, I'm a little worried that that just disappeared on me. All right. So do you guys have any questions about Quixel or any of the tools that I'm using so far while I go ahead and do this for you all? I'm gonna make sure that we get all these pieces working. Anybody have any questions or anything they want me to show in more detail? Well, thank you guys for coming out tonight, of course, and supporting me and, you know, learning some new cool stuff and having a look-see at Unity 5. I'm really enjoying Unity 5, and there's going to be so much that I'm going to be doing with that because now we have access to basically all the tools that I've ever wanted from Pro, and it's for free. Okay, so let's get these guys all set up for you, and that's almost done. Yeah, he only goes to there, so that's perfect. So I'm just gonna make copies of these, make sure we don't go too far. Oops. Too overzealous. You cannot Control J to duplicate more than one layer. Maybe it's Control Shift J. That would seem likely, wouldn't it? Does anybody happen to know what the shortcut is there? That would be super handy. No comments on that. Okay, so this one on the end here, he overlaps a bit, and we need to take care of that. So I'm just going to cut that off. Because I don't want that to interfere with the other pieces. It has to be nice and clean. Okay, so that only really exists there and up here. So by completing those two areas, we're going to be basically done with that. So let's select all of that. And I'm going to group this and call this edge details. That way we know what it is. And it's not just layer 3 copy over and over and over again. Try not to be very sloppy with my work. Okay. Let's finish this off for you guys. Then we get to the really exciting stuff where we're going to be doing some dedo in a moment. And playing with some material based. If you guys have not used dedo or Quixel, I'm a very big fan of Quixel. It's really awesome. And it really sort of feels almost more like science than texturing sometimes, because what you're doing is sort of saying, well, I want this type of material, and then I want weathering on top of that, and then I want acid, and then I want just the texture to be in the cracks and, you know, in the crevices of the material. So you really start to get some really cool looking stuff there. All right, so that works. What I'm going to do here is select all of these. Is that all of that? Yes, it is. I'm going to select all of these, and I'm going to move this just a little bit because I don't want it to repeat right on an edge. Something more like that is fine. Because now what it will do here is on this edge, it repeats in the middle, and repeats in the middle, and it's not right on a bar, you get half a bar sometime. So that works nicely. Okay, so that's okay that that's overlapping there because there's nothing there in the way. We could trim it up to be perfectly correct, and, you know, but that works for now. Let's save that. Bring 3D back over and have another look. So I'm going to tell it once again, go ahead and update your normal from the currently active scene. And there we go. Now all of our edges, all the trim all the way around now has a nice normal map detail. So that's looking pretty good. We've got the edges all set up. We have our bolts, which I made earlier, which is pretty easy. Where we made a selection earlier of a rectangle, all I did was go in and create a shape inside of Unity, or inside of Photoshop, pardon me, and scaled that out, and then just said convert to normal map, and that's what you get. And then I just made copies and put them everywhere. It's really super easy. Oh, you're welcome. Rhino Minnow? Oh, Rhino Mino? That's pretty cool. I like that. Yeah, this is Quixel. Really nice set of tools. I highly recommend it. I think I bought it for just about $100, I think $99. Kind of well gotten my money's worth out of it. And we're about to do some dedo as well, so stick around for that. That's even cooler in my mind. Undo is awesome, of course, because you can literally paint normal map details. You can put text and turn text into embossed text. It's just really cool. I highly recommend that as well, because that has saved me a lot of work on specifically a high poly model of complex shaped guns, and then you want to add those nice seams like I was talking about earlier, and that's some really time saving, hair tearing out kind of work. So that's really cool. Okay, so we can continue to use 3Do here to preview, but I think Unity is better for that. So let's jump over to Unity, and I'm going to go ahead and close this out for now. All right, let's jump back over to Unity. Here we are. Move that off screen. All right. So we're all set here in Unity, and I'm going to go ahead and update the texture so that we can see the edges on that. So we can go down here, and you used to be able to refresh the thing or re-import it, but I don't know, it hasn't worked for me recently. So what I just ended up doing is deleting the texture and then re-importing it manually. A little bit of a pain in the butt, but it's quicker than trying to fiddle with it. Yeah, here it's not working. So I'll just go ahead and delete that. There we go. And you'll notice all the normal map details go away. That's okay. Right click, import new asset. And let's find our texture. So D, dev, sewer, and textures, and it's called normal work. We're going to import that. There we go. Up here, the important thing, we're going to tell it that it is not just a texture, but it is indeed a normal map. And uncheck create from grayscale. Click apply. There we go. Now we have all of our details here inside of Unity. There we go. That's looking really nice. The lighting is incredible in Unity. It pops right away. You don't have to do much to it at all. Got a couple of, like I said, these corner cases. We'll see how it looks after we've got all the other maps on here. And here, as I mentioned, because we unwrap this correctly, it goes all the way around without issue. So that's looking really nice. We might have to come back and find this piece and purposely paint some burned edges or something that looks like it was actually damaged. So that would be pretty neat. And everything else, I'm just looking around it really quick. Okay, everything else is looking pretty good. So let's go ahead and jump into getting some texturing done. So I'll close that down. Oh, that's the desktop. And there's Max. Okay, so we're back to Max for a moment. What we're going to do is actually create a plane. And this is just going to be our sample object to do inside of dedo. So let's do doesn't actually correspond to textures, but I'm just making it texture sizes just so I know what I'm talking about. So I'm just going to create a plane, and this is what we're going to use to generate the palette we were talking about, and just as a representation, so we can throw this into 3Do or into Unity to kind of get it working until we apply it to our mesh. Okay. So I'm going to say export. Well, first I'm going to unwrap it really quick. Unwrap, edit UVs. There we go. That was nice and fast. Collapse all. Yes. Close. It's just a square, so that's all I care about. Export selected. I'm gonna throw it in the same thing. Let's call this texture work. There we go. Okay. I'm gonna save it one more time, but this time as a OBJ. This way, just in case 3Do decides to be nice to us, we have an OBJ format, which is what 3Do needs, and we can preview our texture on here. All right, so we're done with that. Bring up Photoshop. Now, what we're gonna do here is bring up our material selection here. So if you're just joining us, guys, what we're doing here is we're using Quixel to generate some textures, but we're not generating textures the traditional way that you would for a model with all the UV islands all set out. We're actually using a template to create some various areas that we can kind of clone stamp. For our texture needs for this evening, we have a model that has a high amount of overlapping being used to conserve space. So we're going to be creating some texture kind of sample areas that we can then clone stamp and use and create from there. So we're using the power of Quixel's texture generation to our advantage. All right, I'm going to save this, and I'm going to save this in the sewer textures. PSD I tend to have a lot of luck with, so I'm going to use that. So let's call this text make IDs. No IDs, there we go. Just going to give it a name to use, there we go. So we have the file to come back to if we need to. All right, I'm going to click the dedo button. Oh, there it is, click the dedo button. All right, so this is dedo, and here's how it works. Essentially, you're plugging things into it, and when you plug things into it, it takes that information and starts to generate all kinds of information from there. All right, so what we're going to do is say we do have a mesh. It's not much of a mesh, but we do have one. And I'm going to throw that texture work, there we go. So it's just a flat plane because we want to just see what we got. And we do not have a normal map. We just want to create some albedo for the moment. So we're going to work in double resolution, so 2048. We do want metalness, which is the awesome part. And we are scheduled to work in Unity. So those are all of our general settings. My output path, dev sewer, catwalk, catwalk textures. There we go. Okay, so it will put our textures somewhere. Now at the top here we have ID map. So I'm going to click that, and that's what we just created, was the text make IDs. There we go. So here's the real pizzazz. There it comes. If I click links, now it's going to launch this link editor. And Quixel is smart, and it knows that solid black in the background is my background color, and it knows not to do anything with black. And it notices, it said, hey, I see you've got 4 color areas selected. And basically what we're going to tell it is, for each color area, what kind of material should this be? All right. So this one is our top right here. This is going to be the sample area for the trim that we just did. Okay. So we click this box, and you see I get a long list of options here. So it's definitely going to be metal. Let's come over here to metal, and let's look around. I think it's going to be like a steel. You don't necessarily always have to use the exact metal that it is in the real world. You will get to know these materials here, know kind of what they look like. So it's okay to pick a metal that is not physically accurate, but it looks physically accurate based upon your experience. I think we're okay. We're going to go with steel. Steel is going to be the option for a lot of these. So bottom left corner here, this is also going to be steel. And what we're going to do, metal, steel. What we're going to do is we're going to make each of those, one is going to be a clean version, and one is going to be like a dirty, rusty, nasty, weathered version. Okay, and the same thing for these two guys. Again, it's going to be metal. I think I'm going to go for, what was I thinking? Not maybe aluminum? Yeah, actually I think I'm going to do steel for you guys and aluminum for you guys. Change my mind. Because I do want them to be rather shiny for the handbars, the actual railings. Let's go metal, aluminum, and there are hundreds and hundreds of things here. It's amazing the combinations you can create. There we go. Okay, so we got 2 aluminums and 2 steels. Kind of boring right now, but when we start adding individual things to it, you'll see. And I'm just going to click done and create base. And it's going to go ahead and do some thinking. So all this is going to do is it's going to give us a flat material, and we're going to apply that to our other thing. And the reason why we can't use the normal map we've already made is because this is not unwrapped to fit that. And we could use the other one, but when you apply that, it's going to look weird. So I want to make sure we have the right material, and then we can apply it ourselves. And we can always go back and change our mind. That's the great thing about it, is we go back and say, you know what, let's just do it again. So here we go. Let me see if I can change up the music for you guys. A couple of loops here that I like that are pretty good and jazzy for doing this kind of work. You guys have any questions? Rhino, Mino, you doing okay? You like what you see so far? You got any questions? Awesome. Okay, successfully created. There we are. Cool. All right, so we're inside of Dedo now, and we have all of our options here. You'll notice that it created 1, 2, 3, 4. Created a fifth one there that was just everything. That's weird. All right, so we've got our materials here, and we're gonna just start one at a time. I'm gonna go for this guy, the upper right, to begin with. So I'm gonna click the box to enter the material. The important thing to note here is that this second box here, third box, or if you count that, is reflectance. This is actually the color that you want the overall material to be. So if I click this, and if I were to make this black, it'd be like a black aluminum, you know. So I do want this to be fairly light. I'm not gonna go full white. You should always go down about 20%. So why did that disappear on me? There we go. So I'm gonna go down here into at least the 80 range. Probably 180 is probably good. Okay, it's glitching out on me. That's weird. Let's just type it. 180 is good to start with that. Yes, I'm absolutely sure. Okay, excellent. Okay, good. Just making sure you're good to go. All right, so that's our standard color that's going to be for that. And our masking, of course, is going to be 100% because we're just creating squares. Let's go ahead and add a smart material. I love smart materials. Come on, there we go. Okay, so these are all of our materials, and you can see we have this amazing preview over here of what it's going to end up looking like. Let's go ahead and find what we're looking for here. So metal, and we have all these options. So here's aluminum, brushed metal, you know, all kinds of good stuff. I do think we want something that's been pretty well used. So let's take a look down the list here. Not quite like this used, you know, that's maybe something a little different, but definitely something that's been scratched up a bit, tarnished. It's not too bad. Yeah, now we get into the colored stuff. I don't really want it to be colored necessarily right off the bat. Okay, so yeah, we'll pick something up in this range. Something that's been beaten up a little bit. There we go. I'll just click create. And this will come up. You want to say yes, that you want to add it inside of your current group. The other amazing thing about this is that you can actually take each of the layers that it creates, and just like in Photoshop, you can hide them, you can do different opacity, multiply, overlay, all kinds of stuff. All right, so there we go. We've got our material here. So I can go into that subsection there and set him up to be the same. So 185, 185, there we go. The dusty edges to it, which is really cool. Let's change the color of that just a little bit. Let's darken that just a tad. Cavity dirt is pretty good. Don't want it too far down, but that's pretty good. And the scratch is definitely white. We want the scratch to be white. So now we have a nice little material here that we're going to use for. Oh, that's right. No, this is going to be for the trim. So we definitely want this to be a fair bit darker. Let's bring this guy down, probably in the 75 range is probably what I'm thinking for graying metal material. Okay, so dusty edges. Let's bring that up a little bit, somewhere in that range. 130. That's pretty good. Okay, that's looking pretty good here. Cavity dirt, yeah. That's pretty good. Okay. And the scratches, again, we don't want it to be pure white. We don't really have that many scratches. And this is just going to be a generalized material. Now the amazing thing is, all I'm creating here is just, you know, a generic kind of metal-y kind of thing. And if you look up here at the top, I'm only working on the albedo. I'm just working at saying what I want this to look like when it's just a plain texture that you think of. It's auto-generating for me the AO, the gloss, the metalness, and the normal map for this as I create the one texture. It's using the same algorithms to go through and create all the others in real time. So, yeah, boom. That's amazing. All right, so I don't believe you can, one day you'll be able to copy this whole thing and just move it over to another area, but right now you can't. So we're gonna have to try and recreate that, but we're gonna recreate that and then make it even more super dirty at the bottom, okay? So let's go ahead and throw a smart material on top of this guy. Yeah, I know, right? That it is so awesome. This tool is so amazing, and I will probably only be able to show you just the top of the surface of it. Oh, there we go, okay. So again, let's go ahead and pick our metal. And this one we can pick a lot more beaten up. We want this to be a lot more really kind of, that's pretty good, but there was one that I saw that I thought that'd be really good for the other, but not for this one. Maybe it was this, stained steel, yeah. We'll get that going here. I'll show you guys how we can add some nice weathering effects to this. Now we have to be careful that these weathering effects, everything that we're doing is tileable, because we're going to use it to kind of, like you saw we did earlier. So we have to keep that in mind, okay? Almost there. Make sure I can monitor what's going on. There we go. Okay. All right, so we're back. There we go. Let's go. Why did that not? Interesting. Okay, well, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna click the mask button here, and this tells us exactly how much we want to see. No, that's not what I wanted. What was that? Why is it? It's going over what I wanted there. The original, I'm trying to think what the original one was in the corner. Just a second. No. See how it's kind of everywhere, but let's turn off the other ones for now so we can just make sure we're focused on the one that we want. This guy kind of went to the whole texture instead of just down here in the corner, but we'll work with it and we'll fix it. The great thing about this is you can turn things on and off. It's so easy. All right. So our dirt, we don't necessarily want our dirt to be really, really, really dark right away. Let's bring that up just a tad. There we go. Rust miscoloration, we definitely want the rust to kind of shine. It doesn't look like it's moving much for me, so I'll leave that alone for now. And coarse rust. It's like our darkest shadows. Okay, good. Now, you are all set. Looks like all you did was make it dirty. It's kind of weird. Oh yeah, there it is. That's the paint, aluminum. There we go. Awesome. 185. Oh no, I'm sorry. Yes, I know. 75. Perfect. Okay. The primer. A little bit lighter than that. I'm gonna try and create this, rustic across the top. Okay, the dirt is pretty good. I'm gonna lighten it up just a little bit. And I'm going into the mask. If I click right next to it, right here is the mask. So the masking, you can see a preview of the masking here. And if I had an ambient occlusion map, I could start affecting the ambient occlusion. And I do technically have one, because what it's doing here is it generated one for me based upon the textures that I've chosen. And the biggest thing is, as you move around here, you can say, okay, here's all my various options for masking, where it auto defines some of the details. So if you look as I click some of these, sandy dirt is a pretty good one. So it's just kind of putting a general noisy dirt everywhere, which is good for our purposes here, but we have to make sure it's repeatable. So as you're working with these things and you're saying, oh, I don't like the look of that, or I don't like the look of that, take into account this following tip here. So I like sandy dirt, but I think it's still just a little too thick in some areas. Down here in the bottom right, This button, first of all, will invert your mask, which is really cool. Right next to it, if you expand this, you have all kinds of awesome controls here that I don't think a lot of people know about, so I want to let you guys know about it. So if you pop this open, you have all these options. First of all, the seam terminator is so awesome. As you pull this to the top, it will do its best, as you can see here, what it's doing for the whole texture. It will do its best to eliminate seams by checking the boundaries for you, like we want. In this instance, I don't think it's really going to matter based upon what this is doing, but definitely when you're working with a model that has individual islands, just crank that to 100. Done, don't worry about it. The seam brightness here is pretty cool because you can overblow your seams, and the reason this is helpful is if you've ever seen people create textures where they'll create the texture all the way to the edge and then they'll bleed it by a few pixels. This prevents mapping. If you're not familiar, the further an object gets away from the camera in a 3D environment, the texture kind of doubles down by expanding and kind of blurs. So if you blur over the edge and you have something next to it that's a wholly different color, it can sometimes look like you've got this texture bleeding from one area to the next. So to compensate that, we add a little padding. Well, if you have a very light texture, just crank this guy all the way over and it will auto over blur for you, which is really cool. In my instance, I'm going for very dark at the moment, so I'm going to keep it somewhere around here. The other two awesome things here are contrast, tightness, all three, and your black and white balance here. So as you move these bars around, you'll notice that you can affect how much it spreads. It's hard to describe exactly, but I think of it like water on tissue paper, how it kind of just expands. So what contrast does for you is contrast is sort of like an overall leveling. Think of it like that. Like you can say like, oh, I want it to be way, way, way darker and much more pure white and pure black, okay? So if you pull that down really low, there's very little contrast. Everything kind of starts to kind of meld together, which is kind of cool. Your tightness is kind of the spread. So contrast, think of like the height of mountains, and then the tightness is how wide your valleys are in between the mountains, if that makes any sense. So if I turn the tightness way up, the map is going to be very tight. So what's going to happen is your mountain's going to be like shrunk. So if you turn this all the way down, that means spread as far as you like. Problem is it ends up looking kind of crazy. So there's a little bit of a balance between the two. I generally end up with them both being somewhere in the middle, but I tend to go a little looser on the map. So something kind of like this. So you get a nice variety of everything. In this instance, we probably want to be a little more lackadaisical, so something like that. So when you're happy with this, quick preview, does that even work? I know before it was not working. I think there's only if you have 3D open. Okay, so when you're done, just click done, and it's going to apply all of that to the current texture selection. Now, it doesn't look like a whole lot because I was just working with the dirt, but I wanted to make sure that the dirt was well uniform, was well distributed. All right, so how does my paint look? Everything looks pretty good there, so let's go back up. And back up one more. Okay. So that guy is just the one in the bottom corner. So let's go ahead and work with the guy in the upper left corner here. As you can see, he's solid steel. Now this is going to be that metal where we have all the rivety kind of look to it that we're going to be walking on. Okay, so let's go ahead and add our material in here. I'm just going to go straight to the material. Alright, so we do want metal, and we do want it to be kind of just a bare metal. We don't want it to be, we don't want anything to it. Dull steel, dusty brushed metal, that's probably pretty good. Let's go for that. Say yes. It's nice, you just kind of click things and say, go forth, magical texturing wizards, and do some of my work for me, please. Alright, so after we get this guy done, I think we're gonna try and get this copied over to our other map and then preview it inside of Unity, okay? Let's take a look here. Again, let's change our textures here. We don't want it to be pure white. That's never good. Dusty edges. Not too much. I want it to be pretty subtle. There we go. Cavity dirt. Again, you don't want to go like pure black because it won't look good. I only see a couple pixels changing anyway, so somewhere in this range is good. And edge scratches definitely close to white, but we don't really have much. We have edge scratches, awesome. Now, we could add, in theory, like another layer, but we can do that to the bottom corner one. So that guy's all good. I'm trying to speed up a little bit for you guys, just so that we're not doing, you know, the same thing repeatedly. It's sort of boring if you see the same thing over and over again. You're like, I get it. Show me more cool stuff, right? All right, so metal. Let's pick one that's pretty dirty now. Pretty dirty. I do like that. This may not be the right kind of metal, but I like the look of it for what I'm going for here. I'm also trying to take into account in the back of my mind here that the environment that this is going to be in. So I want to take that into account as well. I'm going to lower that just a little bit. Now we can just add specifically, I'm just going to go right down here to weathering. So let's add dirt to this and say directional heavy dirt. It's good. This isn't a sewer, so we should have kind of like gunk, but this looks too gunky, you know? So yeah, let's go ahead and add this guy, and we can start to mess with that a bit. All right. Got some new music for you guys here, courtesy of some of my buddies over at Starboard Games, so I thought I would give that a try. Let's see. It's pretty good, but I don't generally try to play things that have lyrics in them because it detracts from if I'm telling you something. But we'll let it go for a little bit and see how it works out. Alright, we have our metal here, and this is way, way too dark. So let's bring this up quite a bit, in fact. Alright, sorry, that's a little distracting. Okay, let's bring this up a bit, cavity dirt. It's looking pretty good. And what I'm doing here is I'm actually going to kind of overdo it a little bit on purpose. It makes no difference no matter what I do. Overdo a little bit on purpose, and I'm going to show you some of the layering effects, okay? So I've got my metal and I've got my dirt on top of this, and I want to make sure that I'm not overdoing it. So let's try and, this is a dirt, so let's do our dirt again. Start with that, okay? Options. Alright, I do want this to be a little bit more robust, so let's lower the brightness of that. Terminator is not going to matter too much. Okay, that's pretty decent. I like that. I like the way that's going. Okay, so we're going to do that. First, we're going to mask it, so we just get less overall. It's still, I don't like these large pieces that are kind of very prominent because that's going to repeat quite a bit. Let's go back into here and poke around for just a second. See if we can't find something that's a little bit more uniform for our purposes. And color variation. That's pretty good, but again, some very distinct areas that are going to be way too noticeable that they repeat. So let's take a look here. And sometimes it's just a matter of experimentation. I kind of like that. Let's go ahead and alter this a bit. So let's bring it down a bit so it's just sort of a general noise, and contrast just a little bit. So I can see it on my screen. It might be a little hard for you guys to see, but I think I'm liking this a lot better. That's too far. All right, let's try that. Okay, yeah, just a little bit of general noise and dirt going on here. And let's add one more layer. Come on. There we go. Okay, I think I saw some pretty cool stuff here in the Yeah, in the military metal, they have some nice things in here that look like really scuffed up. There we go. There's rusted armor. That'd be pretty cool for some rust. This is a really good one. I like this one a lot. Military Metal 01. What this does for you guys, and two is not my favorite. One, this is awesome. I would use this for like a robot, and you want to have lots of scratches, or like a shield or a sword that has lots of scuffs from it being used quite a bit. So let's take a look at this and see how this looks. I want to add some general kind of dings and scratches and dents, like people have dragged containers across the metal and done all kinds of, harsh things to it. All right. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. But we definitely want to change the color and make it very. So let's do. Yeah, pretty dark and nasty and bent up and. All right, directional dirt. That darker. Okay, cavity. Oop. No, sorry. Clicked too many times. Click that, click military metal. Cavity dirt, there we go. Oh, yeah, we'll lighten that up a bit because I don't necessarily want those streaks across it. There we go. Okay, I think I'm happy with this. We're going to try and bring this over into our other materials here. So, taking note, we also have an AO, a gloss, very important, a metalness, and a normal. Normal's not really working out too well, and we don't necessarily care. We already have our normals set up, so that's okay. But let's go ahead and see if we can preview this, which it would be pretty cool, wouldn't it? So let's do, click the 3D button, and 3D should bring up plane. Yep. There we go. Should be able to preview our textures on this. Which side is it? Yeah, this side. There we go. Okay. So with 3Do, to bring up your options, you hit the space bar. And that brings up all of your options here. So we can change how much light, where the light's coming from, all kinds of awesome features here. The little spheres here are to change your lighting model, which is really cool because what I recommend is change your lighting model so that it's close to the environment that this is going to be in when it's in game. So these two on the end here kind of represent pretty well what we're going to be looking at in game. So that's really cool. I'm going to force refresh. There we go. That's a lot closer. That's a lot closer. Okay. So which direction was that? There we go. Now that makes sense. Okay. So our top left and bottom right here are for the generic area where you're going to be walking most of the time. And then our top right and bottom left are going to be for our handrails. So you'll notice that like this guy down here is very reflective, which is pretty awesome. And this guy up here is really dull and has lots of dirt to it. That one might need a little bit more work, but overall I think most of these came out pretty nice. This top one here is going to be for the general area where we're walking most of the time. I think with the reflections here, that came out really nice. That looks really good. And then down here is a much dirtier, gunkier environment piece, and you can get really close to it, and you got all kinds of cool scuffs in there. So we're going to start with these. Probably won't be the final texture that we turn in, but it's pretty good for a base start. Now, the other cool thing is you do have lots of options here where you can actually spin the light, which is really cool if you want to just look at it statically. You also have some awesome stuff down here. Let's go over these real quick, because when you're finished with a model and you want to show it off, if you don't have Marmoset, if you don't have Unity 5, if you don't have UE4, anything that you can bring the model in and kind of see it in real time, 3D is a good alternative to that because it comes with the Quixel suite. So you just kind of position your model any way you want, like, hey, let's show off that cool highlight. And you have all kinds of options here, which are just really just click and use. So SSAO, you'll really get a lot out of this if you have things that have a lot of cavities or a lot of crevices and hooks and things, because it's subsurface ambient occlusion. So you get like all kinds of subsurface scattering, like through, you can see it through your fingertip in the sunlight sometimes. It's spreading the light out across the surface. So you have some options there for that. You won't see it much in this because it's a flat plane. Depth of field is really cool, so you can kind of see that starting to work in the corners there. Really nice little subtle touch to your representing your models, which is awesome. All kinds of options there for that. Lens flaring is really cool, so I can turn that on. You can see it start to affect over here. You can see it affecting from the bright light there. That's really cool if you're wanting to set up a neat little shot. This is the kind of thing I would recommend, or I would see rather, in like a Call of Duty game where you look at your gun, it's at these cool angles, and you see the light reflecting off of it. It's like, look at this cool gun you just unlocked. These are the kind of effects you can create with that. Sunburn, pardon me, overblows the light on purpose to make it kind of like it's so bright in my eyes. You can turn on vignetting, which causes like a darkness around the edges. Oh, sorry, microphone. Darkness around the edges, neat little effect. General noise, and then you can even do, where was it? Yeah, lens dirt. So you can just throw dirt and scratches on the screen like it's, like you're looking through a dirty lens. So all of those combined together, we can create kind of a cool effect here. Make this a little bigger and you can see it. So we do that. Then the nice part is down here in the bottom left corner, you set your texture, resolution, to scale, and just click the screenshot button, and bam, it just took a screenshot for me. Don't believe me? Watch. Go here and open, and it happens to be on my desktop. Probably gonna be under screenshot. Screen, yep, here's all the other ones that I took recently of other models. Actually, I can show you some of those. I'll show you some of those. Some of those, and the one that we actually want. So here's some other models that I did for other projects, and you can see how they turned out. They looked really nice. Here's the current one that we just took a screenshot of. So at 100% resolution, that looks pretty cool. So that's what we did. Here's some other ones just to give you a quick preview. The SSAO really looks nice on those. This is like a pill I did, pretty cool. Remote for this is a remote for a RC car. So you can see here all the textures here were done in Quixel. So the screen here, all of this here, the metal around the edges here, the screws, everything was all done in Quixel. Even all the way through this, all of this was done in Quixel as well. So this was one that I was really happy with the way it turned out. And here's a bit more. So all of this, including the ribbing there, the bands, all done with Undo and Dedo. Just take your time and figure it out, and there you go. All right, so we're all done here. So let's go ahead and export what we're doing and bring it into our other map and play around with it a bit. So we're gonna bring up our exporter, which is up here in the upper left, and bring that up. And it's real simple. We tell it where we want it to go to. So I'm gonna say, hey, go to the catwalk textures, please. And I'm gonna give this a name. So this is gonna be our palette. So just call it palette. And the underscore individual letters. So N would be for normal map, D would be for diffuse, etc., etc. PNGs works fine for me. 100% Unity, export, do it. Give it a second. Yeah. Rhino Mino, I think that's how you say your name. Yeah, that you can get so much awesome detail with this, just really quickly. I have a full Quixel tutorial suite coming. It goes through absolutely all the options. That kind of holds your hand for the first 2 or 3 episodes and says, we're gonna click this, and we go through specific examples. And then we get into some more detailed stuff. The stuff I'm doing tonight is kind of ad hoc, just sort of, I just came up with it, on my way home from CrossFit. And I was like, okay, well, I think this is what I want to do to show the guys kind of the power of it, introduce you to it, and then use it for my purposes this evening. So look for that coming soon. I'll get you guys rolling on that. Okay, so we're all done there. So if we can close down this thing, say, we're good there, thank you so much, close. Oh, and 3Do freaked out because we closed everything, but 3Do, we're done with you too, thank you. All right, so this guy has served his purpose. So let's bring up our textures. There it is. All right, and oh yeah, the RC remote. Thank you. Yeah, I really like that model a lot. I think I have that up on Sketchfab. Let me see. Sketchfab. I'll let that load for a second. Okay, int dev. Let's go ahead and get back to our sewer here. I want to get this done for you guys. And under sewer, catwalk textures. So here's where it pumped everything out. So we got A for our albedo, or your diffuse that people are used to calling it. G for my glossiness, M for my metalness, and then N for the normal. As you can tell, we're not going to really use that. It didn't work very well. But that's because of the settings we got going on here. Normally it works awesome. Normally, no pun intended. All right, so we have our materials here, and the metalness is going to be one of the biggest things that we're going to want to really focus on. The gloss, not so much, because we don't really, if I remember correctly, in Unity, let's go to texture. We don't really have a gloss here. We have a metallic. So the metalness, that's what we're really concerned about. So we'll use that. And then, of course, our ambient, our diffuse, our albedo, we definitely want that. See if we can find that for you. 72 miles, come on. Yeah, there it is. There she be. Okay, and share. All right, so here's the link to that if you're interested. That's the link to the RC remote. So that's on Sketchfab using 100% textures created inside of Quixel, and so that will show you all the nice. It looks a little different than it does in the D-Do, in the 3Do shots, because 3Do does a fantastic job. But pardon me, now that I have access to Unity 5, I'm gonna be using that probably more so. All right, so let's go ahead and start chopping this guy up and see how it looks in Engine. The fun begins. All right. So a trick that I use is create a new texture, and we'll create a 1024, and I'm going to choose any random color, preferably something that does not exist in the texture already, and fill. Whoa, something is not right there. I think our mode got set. Yeah, our mode got set to grayscale. That's strange. Okay. Okay, Phil. What are you doing to me here? Image mode. Still on grayscale. Okay, I want RGB, please. Thank you. There we go. Copy. All right. So if I paste it on top of here, you'll notice that if I put this roughly over top of this square area, it covers this whole area, and that's what we definitely want. So we know that that's a 1024. We come here, we paste that guy, you'll notice that's up in this corner. Perfect, the way it works out like that, right? And there we go, okay. Thank you. Okay, so that's perfect, the way that fits right up there in the corner, and that's by design. So if we go ahead and select that area, hide, and choose the underlayer, this is what we actually want. This is what we created this for. So there we go. Take that guy, and you've served your purpose. Thank you. And I'm going to pull up a. Should be okay. Paste it up here. There we go. Let's go ahead and throw you roughly over top of this area. Perfect, right there. And what I'm gonna do here is okay, there we go, good. We wanna test this out, but we wanna make sure that it's gonna work. So let's go and save. I'm gonna call this catwalk maps. Save that. See how that looks inside of Unity. So this is only going to overlap this middle area here. So let's get the lighting on it. And We go to assets. What we should do here, so let's go ahead and do it right. Good new folder, call it textures. And we're going to actually import the textures here, and we point to the textures from the material. Okay, so right click, import new asset, and catwalk maps, import. It is a texture indeed. There we go. Now materials, catwalk test. Yep, that's our material. So here in albedo, I'm going to click that and look for it. There it is. Boom. All right, so there is our albedo texture created in Quixel in Unity 5 with the awesome lighting going on. Everything else looks a little weird right now because it's just solid colors in the background, but that's looking really nice. We've got some individual details, but they're not too frequent, so that when they repeat quite often, you won't really be able to tell and it won't be a problem. Now, let me see if I can do something really fast for you guys that I think you will really like. Characters, can we do that? I've not yet done this, so let's try this really fast. I want us to be able that when we're ending here to be able to actually walk on the catwalk. How cool would that be? And like look at everything and see how it looks in first-person view. So that's what we're going for right now. Just taking a quick second to try and import. Yeah, I see third-person character controller there. So that's probably gonna give me what I want. Standard assets, characters, first-person controller, FPS controller. There we go. All right, so if I bring you into the scene, where are you? F, you're way up there. All right, let's bring you down to earth, so to speak. There you are. Okay. So the goal here will be to be able to walk on our catwalk when we're all done. So what I'm going to do is go to test me, and I'm going to set it to static. Yes, change children. This means that when I start up the game here, and if I click play, will this work? No. Because I need to give test me some physics. We need to give it we'll give it a mesh collider. Oh no. Okay. Let's remove that. We're going to add a physics. Just going to give it a box collider. And what I need to do is actually edit the collider and move it over. I'm just going to create it so that the floor will work. And the reason being, and it seems a little, well, the reason being is that we imported this whole object just for the purpose of seeing it in engine in order to create our textures with it. And ideally what you would do is every piece you would import individually, and then you would take those individual pieces and apply all the proper collisions and things to them. So we kind of cheated it a little bit just so that we can get it in here and look at the lighting and make sure it's working. So that was our purpose the whole time. So there we go. So now I can kind of walk around. I have to be careful though, because I can't walk too far one way or the other or I'll fall off. See, sort of like that. So, but we can now walk on it, which is pretty cool. So we can look at it from a first-person perspective and see if I were to look over the edge, how far would I see? Would I see certain? Oh, don't walk too far. Would I see certain things? And we can spot problems like this, and we can look at it in perspective. So that looks pretty good. So let's get the rest of the maps in place and really be able to look at it with the lighting and see how good of a job we did, okay? So where's there it is. Thank you. Okay. Looks good, looks good. Now we could add some additional box colliders and get it all set up so that we can't fall off the edges, but for now, we're not gonna worry about that. All right, back to Photoshop. All right, so if we just duplicate this guy, we're going to need to go through and make sure that we don't have any nasty, terrible seams. But for the most part, if we just get this thrown in here, we can see it applied to our model and make sure that that it repeats properly, or that we can get it to repeat properly. And I'll show you how we can do that. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and select all these guys, move them all over the place. I want to make sure that I have as few obviously repetitious things as possible. So I'm going to put that right there. And I know I'm overlapping a lot of stuff right now. We're going to go ahead and mask it in a second. So that's all good. One more over here for those guys. That's all good there. Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and mask these things off. So for this one here, this last one that I copied, I only want this area and this area. I don't want the middle area here. I'm going to go ahead and come in here. Let's go ahead and set up a selection ahead of time. So I'm going to select. And be a little sloppy with it on the bottom here. Okay. So I'm going to choose this guy again. Then we add a mask. And there we go. So I've masked to just show me only the things I really want to see are those areas. Okay. So I can do the same thing for each of these pieces, which I need to zoom in a little bit. There we go. So for this piece here, and make a selection as well. So I want to mask only the things I want to see. So for example, I want all of that, obviously. And we want all of this, obviously. But we don't want to go too far. There we go. And then just hit the mask button. And so it gets rid of the excess for you. But the nice thing about masking versus erasing is this is what's called a non-destructive workflow. And what that means is if I had this piece here, and for some reason I liked it exactly the way it is, and then you erased all this, I would come back to you and say, no, I forgot to tell you we actually need this stuff here. Well, with a non-destructive workflow, you can just undo the mask, and there you go, it's back. And that way nothing is ever permanently deleted when it doesn't need to be. Go ahead and do that, and we will mask that. And then the top ones were okay because there's nothing up there for it to bother, so to speak. We do have a seam here, which we're going to take care of. Don't worry, I see it. And let's go ahead and save again. And turn off our UV guide, save, and jump back over to Unity. Okay, so looking pretty good. Again, let's go to our assets, to our textures. I'm going to reload this, so let's delete that and bring it back in. Again, this is the fastest way to test this, and I don't know of a better way yet because you can't reload things, but there we go. All right, so that's looking pretty good. I want to find the seam. I know it's here somewhere. I'm having trouble finding it though, to be honest. I think it's right there. Yeah. It's hard to find. So let's take a preview. Let's take a little 3D walk around, take a look at how it's looking. So this is just with normal map applied and with our albedo, or what you might call a diffuse texture. So if I walk up and down you can see some of the details in it, some scratches and little dents and divots and all the like. It's pretty awesome. There's a pretty obvious seam right there, so we have to work that out. But overall, this is looking pretty nice. And also take into account how your model is going to be viewed. So the camera in our game is not first person, and it's not this close. It's actually quite far up, and you're looking down at all of your characters running around. So some of these things might not be visible, so you need to make sure you take that into account. Now, I'm not saying you should say, oh, well, the camera's going to be so far away, so I'm not going to fix any of these seams. That's not a good practice. A good practice is, let's fix it because it's a problem. If it's within my ability to fix, I will fix it. And that way this can be a portfolio piece. Why do you call it albedo? That's the technical term for something that is just color and has no other lighting or shading information. So a pure diffuse, a diffuse map, if you're familiar with diffuse maps being just your color texture, albedo and diffuse are kind of the same thing. They're not exactly the same thing, but for our purposes here, they're the same thing. It's essentially just your color map, because then you apply just the colors, which is just the look of the metal, and then we apply things like the normal map, which actually gives it the bumped physical texture, and then we apply the gloss metalness or specular maps, and that handles the lighting, how much the light is going to be spread out, how sharp are the details of the light, how sharp is the shine reflection. Yeah, it's a great question, because albedo is one of those words that most people have never heard of. They've been taught diffuse, 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 which makes sense, you know. Albedo is just a more technically, physically accurate term for that same kind of thing. So, great question. I appreciate it very much when people ask questions. So this is looking really good, so let's go ahead and get the other things like the metal bars, because I'm tired of looking at this ugly color. So, alright, let's zoom you in there. There we go, okay. Alright, let's grab our other colors here. Now, what I'd like to do is show you guys, maybe I can move this over here, show you guys how we can copy this. I'm going to bring this over here, and I'm going to make one of the pieces be like a dirty, the dirty piece, you know, like the piece that we designed to be very grungy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose this center piece again, just because it's the most prominent. We can walk on it pretty easily. I'll show you how we could create a varying texture set just by replacing this with the other one. So zoom out just a little bit more. I need to be able to see both lines. There we go. Okay, sounds good. And I would like to, can I? No, I can't, unfortunately. Can you select? You can. That's awesome, I like that. Alright, save that. Okay, so we're gonna look at that, but I also want to get the other textures in here. So, for those guys, we want it to be pretty white, actually, is the problem with those. But I do want my metalness, so let's go ahead and close that down. Metalness, there we go. Let me show you how the metalness works as an example. So I'm going to take a subsample of that. We can take more. We can take a lot more. Just take the whole thing. Okay, let's bring that over here. So if I bring that over here, there it is, okay. And this is going to look really weird and funky at first, but I just want to show you an example of how it translates, how it works. Okay, so let's put that in there, and I'm going to save this as catwalk metal, okay. Save that, undo that. I'm going to save this as catwalk maps. Yes, I'm familiar that I'm going to overwrite it. Alright, so now if we jump back over to Unity, what I'm going to do is once again delete this. Import new asset, and I'm going to bring in the maps and the metal. I can only do one at a time. It's irritating. Okay, import new asset, metal. Okay, so we do definitely want the maps to be applied. So we go back to our material, and we say albedo. We want this guy applied. Perfect. Okay. So you see our dirty version of this metal in the middle here. It's a lot darker, so for a different environment entirely, and these scratches and things show up really, really well. Let me check my preview here so you guys can see. Yeah. These show up really nice on this texture here, especially as the light passes over them. So that's really cool. So that's just a sub, example. Now let's try and really push the metal if we can. So for the metallic here, I'm going to click it, and I'm going to find our texture, which should be right here. Metalness, okay. Boom. And you'll notice that although these things still have the color information, they're starting to get some variation here. So I bring up my metallic. What's going on? Metalness. Move. Why are you getting all funky on me? Took away all my options for the metalness. Oh, That's cool. Did not know you could do that. If you double click on the middle here, it will open it for editing for you. Okay, well that's a little unusual and does not make me happy that you cannot edit it. Oh, your general settings. Okay, I got you. Okay, so two options we can do here. The one is you can load a map, which it purely takes on those details, or with the metallic, with it blank, then that's when you have access to the sliders. So here we can make it really super metal, not heavy metal like bands, but really super metal or very not metallic at all. And so it's just shiny now, but it's not shining like metal shines. So bring that up and we can even, see if I make this, the rougher the metal I make it, if I bring this all the way down, so this is really rough metal. So it's not really reflective at all. This would be really good for construction equipment and that kind of thing. And as you get closer to like the crystal ball kind of effect, you really bump this up. And see, this is probably too much for this kind of a metal structure. Somewhere more in this range is more appropriate, like the halfway mark is much more appropriate. If you go all the way up, then my reflection actually is so small you can barely see it. And now this is almost liquid, it's so reflective. That's kind of ridiculous for this purposes. So it didn't really work out using our metalness texture because for this instance, for the way that this metal works, we would want it to be a lot different. So we'll have to play with that and see if we can go back into this and say, okay, this is obviously way too much, so we'd have to, let's go in and adjust it a bit. So say adjustments, let's go into our levels, let's see what we can do here, see if we can make some changes. We probably, like this would be that pure white, so we probably want somewhere more in this range. Bring the whites up a bit. Somewhere more in that range. You want it to be very dark, and then the closer you get to white is the shinier it gets. So you could, mess with that a bit and see what you can come up with, make a better solution for you. What Quixel does is not always, 100% this is, gospel and you should use it right away. You have to salt to taste, because a lot of times you'll take it and you say, I know I have a specific purpose for my game, or we're going for a certain aesthetic. So it's always good to keep that into the back of your mind. All right, so let's go ahead and just finish off this color really quick. I'm just going to kind of paint it in for the moment. So let's do 165, somewhere in that range. Sounds really good for me. And what I want is, I want all of these areas. And we still have, by the way, our palette did not produce. Well, we did get this down here. Let's take that guy. I wanted both the clean and the dirty, but what we ended up with is just kind of the dirty. And it's better than nothing, right? So move this guy down here, and this is our trim texturing going on here. So we'll make some copies of that, and we'll mask that out. And we'll call that good for the evening. Let's put those guys together. I'm just going to make a big square of this that we can copy pasta around and we can use to our liking. Okay. There we go. Perfect. Now this guy we can make duplicates of, and we're just going to move him wherever we need him to be. So that one actually works out for more than one at a time, which is really kind of cool. Shift that a little bit so it's not so obviously repetitious. See, that repeats a little too often for my taste, but those are on two separate pieces, so I think that'll be okay. And those are the only two areas that it actually occurs. So that works out really nicely. Let's make some quick selections. And let's mask that, go to you. Now for this one, we only want the middle, whereas before we did not want the middle. Okay, select that, and mask him out. There we go. Oh, and this final little area up here. One final, that's what we got the coloring for. And select the whole area. Perfect. We'll fill you in. There we go. I want a generic color to start the metal with. And let's not forget. It's kind of, oh, missed a bit there. It's good to know. Okay, got that as well. And we need a little bit more on the bottom here. We a little overzealous and we did not not include the front part of it. I wonder if for the mask, if I can. No. Let's just move that along. There we go. Okay, now everything has at least a base color. We have a really great starting point. Let's go ahead and save that one more time. And we'll replace this one last time. That one didn't really work out, so we'll have to work on that. Again, I'm not an expert. I'm always learning just like you guys are. So I'll make mistakes too, and if we make them together, maybe we can learn from them. Okay. So I'm pretty happy with that as a beginning. Oh, we got a problem there. We gotta make sure we continue that all the way to the edge. This looks pretty good all along the edge here. This dirt, it does not repeat too often. I see it in various ways. And the nice part is because we offset the vertical bars on our normal map, it's offsetting at different areas on the diffuse. And then you get a double down effect for your variations. So that works out really nicely to our favor. Gotta make sure we fix that seam there. Taking mental note of things to do for next time. There's a seam there to fix. But overall, the sign, we need to do something with the sign. This is gonna be like a sign, you know, it says caution or something that says, you know, you shouldn't be here. But overall, it looks really nice. This came out beautifully with just a little more than base colors. Our diffuse map here has some, you know, scratches and dents in it to add a little bit more realism. Pardon me. And we can work on the metal here to add some subtle effects to that without too much extra work needed. We got our trim all set up, a nice dark trim. And the bottom, by the way, repeats what's on the top. So even if you had from underneath and you were looking at it, it's the same type of material on top. So let's take one last little walk on our thing here, and it looks really nice. This metal turned out amazing. With just a few clicks inside of ooh, I fell to the floor. With just a few clicks inside of dedo and endo, we created some really nice looking metal here without a whole lot of hassle. And we were able to create, if we walk over here, we can see it over the edge. Some really nice trim work there, looked really good. And it's not really all that much to fix. Just a few minor things really. And a few minor things, and I'll clean up some of the seam work. Make sure that our variations are not going to get us in trouble as far as massive sets of repetition. And you know, this wasn't all that hard. Very kind of relaxed, and got some work done. Now, obviously, if I wasn't also streaming to you guys and explaining everything, I could probably go a little faster and get through it a little bit quicker. But I don't mind at all. I'm happy to share with you guys and show you what I'm doing, and you can kind of follow me on the journey. So that looks really cool. I'm really happy with that. It's just really neat to see it come together. The new features inside of Unity 5, by the way, are amazing. This character controller, you see as I'm walking, sorry, I fell off the world again. He automatically kind of steps and it makes a little sound. I don't know if you guys can hear the sound, but I hear the sound in my headset. I can hear the steps of little footsteps. So that's really cool that they've added all that kind of stuff for us to play with right off the bat. Oh, you're welcome. Rhino Mino. I think that's how you pronounce it. Forgive me if that's incorrect, but that's a cool name. I like that. Yeah, I'm really happy you guys had a good time. I'm open for any questions for a few minutes before we shut down for the evening. If you guys have any questions or anything specific, definitely check out Quixel. Has some amazing stuff. I've also been learning Substance Designer. Oh yeah, the Twitch game dev channel is awesome. Yeah, you can learn all kinds of stuff. And I also go over just pure modeling, which we did earlier. So if I delete this, you'll see I went over how we modeled this to begin with, which is really cool. How we created all the pieces, how we made sure that they will all be modularly acceptable. So all these pieces are amazing. They were so easy to create, but they look really cool. So you get a lot out of it when you plan ahead. And I've even done some very, very large projects. I can try and show you guys really quick. Some very large projects that if you all are interested, I can do some tutorials on some of the bigger stuff that I've done. So if I go to build, let's find where are the windows at. Oh, it's an older one in the Max folder. I have some incredibly big projects here that I've been working on for a long time. So if you're interested in seeing some really in-depth stuff, we can get into like this entire house that I've been modeling. So yeah, we can get into that as well. Anything from the tiniest detail all the way up to the biggest scene. I'm down for teaching you guys and showing you all that I know, and that helps me grow and get better. So you can see we've got functional gutters. So I've created some amazing stuff over the years. I've been very blessed to have worked with some really great people doing it as well. Like, some of these guys have been really helpful in pushing me to make sure that I work harder and better and do fancier things. I left myself a note, which is another awesome feature of Max. So yeah, definitely. If you guys have any questions, anything you want me to really focus on or show you specifically, if you want to see more Quixel, if you want to see more Unity 5, that's definitely what I'll do. So make sure you follow. You can subscribe if you like. I'm going to have a little decoration thing here on the screen to show you guys later on, but the goal is to take all the subscriber funds and push it towards buying more tools, software tools. And once we have all the tools, then we're going to switch over to a complete charity fundraising thing. So the more you guys come out, the more you subscribe, you'll be supporting charities just to watch me work. And I'll be happy to explain things. In one of my other videos, I went over how to use this tool over here. This is Outliner, and this is amazing. So here's all of our catwalks and railing pieces. Everything's nicely labeled, everything's nicely collapsed, and you can hide and unhide individual pieces or whole groups of pieces very easily. So that's one of the things that I went over. And text tools as well. Text tools is an amazing suite. This will save you hours and hours and hours. As awesome as Quixel is for texturing, Text Tools is just as awesome, if not more awesome, for getting ready for texturing. All of your unwrapping, all of your packing needs. It's incredible, and I'm still learning new things that it can do. So as I said, guys, if you have any questions, if it's anything you want me to focus on, anything you want to see, let me know. Send me a message. I'm always available, and I definitely want to hear you guys' feedback and see what you think. And we'll focus on finishing this up next time and move on to our next project. I have some really big, really exciting projects coming really soon, and we'll be using Quixel heavily, as well as Max. We'll be using some ZBrush and get into some Max scripting and some really cool tools in there, and show you guys how to create your own tools too. So I'm going to go ahead and shut it down for now. Let me know. Oh, I do have a YouTube channel. Yes, sir. Let me throw that up there for you. YouTube. I have probably close to 100 videos up there. Let me check. playlists. Maybe this will tell me. Okay, maybe not quite that many. 8 for the current season. We have 4 art jams, which are between 1 and 4 hour long videos if you have that kind of time. And then we have 31 other videos for the rest of the pilgrimage. So let me bring up the channel as a whole for you here. View as public. There we go. There it is. Perfect. There is YouTube for you. And the site itself. So everything gets posted there as well. And any of the individual files you might need to follow along with the tutorial, that gets posted there as well. And then of course right here on Twitch, and all the videos from Twitch will be published to the YouTube channel as well, so you can view it at a later date. So all of this is saved for you, and you guys can review it anytime you like. So definitely, and I also have, I will show you here, pre-stream. It's technically my pre-stream screen, so you can't see me anymore, that's okay. So here is Google+, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and of course you're on Twitch. So you can follow me at all these places. I make sure to let you guys know when I'm doing things. I try my best and let you guys know ahead of time so you can plan to be there, or if you know you're not going to be able to be there, another stream. And yeah, send me a message. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you need, what you want to see, and we will definitely do that for you. What degree do you have to be a game designer? Zombie Chick, the awesome part is, my honest opinion, is absolutely none. There's no degree that you need to be a game designer. What you need to have to be a game designer is access to the tools and a hell of a lot of heart and a willingness to learn and work hard and learn new things. You know, if it's something you care about, then you're not going to worry about how complex it is or how long it takes you to get there. You're just going to push and get there. And to be honest, I have a bachelor's degree, and that's just what I happen to do. Bachelor's degree in multimedia arts and animation. But you know, it happens to be sort of in field, but it's not necessarily directly necessary. There's so many things out there, digital tutors, 3D Motive, just YouTube, you know, things like this where I'm showing you guys what I know, and that can help you get there. So as long as you have heart and you're willing to work, there's plenty of stuff out there that you can do it. You don't really have to have a degree. A degree helps because it does add a little bit more legitimacy to your claim that this is what I'm really into. You know, if you're into it, then be all about it. And it does give you some experience with the tools, obviously, because they teach you things. But definitely just always, my whole spiel is, you know, always keep learning, keep getting better, keep practicing things. I'm available if you have questions whenever. There's plenty of people who are available. I have people that I learn from still, you know, and so they teach me so much. And we continue to learn together, and that's what it's all about. We'll all get better. Art will get better, and that's my ultimate goal. Just push art, push the limits of what we can do, what we can see, and it's going to be awesome. So yeah, make your games. You know, jump right in. Unity, I can't recommend it highly enough. There's so many tools at your fingertips that are completely free now. There's hundreds of thousands of tutorials. Just jump in, follow the sample projects to the letter. Learn all about it, and then you can start just swapping out your custom content, and before you know it, you've got a functional game. I mean, you see tonight, I was doing texturing work, and in seconds, we had a first-person controller that automatically had the head bob. It made sounds as I stepped, and in a few seconds later, I added collision, and we were walking around a world. I mean, basically, you throw a HUD in there and some characters, and you've got the beginnings of a game in, you know, just under hours. So anyway, that's my soapbox. Definitely check out everything you can. Let me know if you need anything as far as where to go to look for stuff, or if I have anything that you need, or you know, if you want me to do a tutorial about something specific. I'm even willing to learn new tools if it's something you're interested in. I'm willing to learn. So definitely let me know. I hope you guys enjoyed it very much. I thank you for coming out. Definitely don't forget to follow, subscribe if you want to. I appreciate that. All the funds, like I said, will go towards tools. And once we've kind of flushed out the tools, I'm switching over to 100% towards charity. We're going to raise some money to help some people. And while I'm helping you guys, we'll help other people who are in need. That's really dear to my heart as well, so that's what we're going to do. And yeah, so let me know. I'm gonna bow out here because I'm gonna go to bed. But I appreciate you guys coming out very much. Look forward to seeing you guys again. Thank you for coming, and keep practicing, get better, and I'll see you next time as the pilgrimage continues.